welcome back. I'm super excited today as I'm going to begin sharing with you what I found in the preseason film from these rookie quarterbacks. This is part 1 of a 3-part series. Today we're going to be looking at Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels and Drake Maye. Part 2 will be Bo Nix, Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy. And then part 3 will be Spencer Rattler and Joe Milton. I am going to be working very hard to get more content out and content that you guys want to see. So feel free to let me know in the comments what you would like to see next. And if you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. It would be greatly appreciated. We will start off with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams started really strong against the Buffalo Bills in week 1. Nothing really comes open on this first play, and so he evades the pressure and ends up getting rid of it. That's kind of fine. But then the second play is quite long developing, and he shows the ability to hang in there and throw an absolute strike. One of the questions about Caleb is his ability to play in structure, so I thought this was really promising. And then the next play, he does this sort of Mahomes-like flick, and you can have flashy plays that aren't particularly necessary, and then there's pulling this off when the pocket's breaking down and you need to get the ball out. So this was a really impressive start in my opinion. But then I did start to see a few plays where you don't get away with this when it's not preseason. And will he be able to iron these things out? I think he will with the right coaching, but he threw this ball to his receiver who was not only covered, but the Bills defender was literally in front of his receiver. It seems like he panicked under pressure and threw it out of assumption that his receiver was going to be open, and he wasn't. Nothing to add on this play, dumps this off. But then this is a play where I can appreciate that he's made the throw, but something that Caleb would do in college is he wouldn't take the open read if he was able to predict what might come open further down the field, and he would do that successfully. However, in the NFL, you're working with windows, and the windows close up very quickly. This is open, and this is your window of opportunity. But if you recognise that this receiver is coming open as well, further down the field, that's brilliant. I would love him to make this throw as he's recognised it here, rather than taking all these steps and risking the window closing up. Because as you can see, the throw is made a bit more difficult as the receiver's being squeezed into the sideline. Receiver let him down here really, this throw was fine. Shows off his mobility as nothing comes open here. Lots of bootleg action in this game as you can see, and he wraps up this one with a nice throw on the run. Week 2 was a bit tougher for Caleb. The Bengals defense were a bit more on it than the Bills were. He started off missing this throw, but sort of alright. He was moving to his left. It's not an easy throw. He then tried to force this to his back underneath when it wasn't really on. It definitely seemed like he hadn't really loosened up yet. Really enjoyed seeing him hang in the pocket again on this play, but then must have been some sort of misunderstanding with him and his receiver. Makes this short throw, but the Bengals defense is all over it. He makes another couple of accurate throws, threading the needle, but this is all getting a little bit one-ready, which is fine, it's preseason. I think this is Caleb at his best in terms of processing. He draws this defender down with his eyes and then throws the deep ball with the right timing. Although he is slightly off with the throw, this is excellent processing. This next play wasn't set up in the best way. He doesn't do anything stupid, takes the sack. Definitely starting to find his rhythm now, looks off the defense and makes this throw underneath. Another short throw, but then on this one I think he makes it more difficult than he needs to. He's receiving pressure and he makes this movement to his left, squares himself up to the defender to sort of try and throw him off, which he does. But all of this movement is unnecessary and it's inefficient. He can just slide up in the pocket here, set his feet and make a throw. And then when he does end up in the same position he could have ended up in a lot more efficiently, he doesn't take that moment to set his feet. He thinks he can just throw it on the move and off platform, and he ends up missing the throw. And then on this play, again, one of his highlight plays. I want Caleb Williams to do well. I think he will. I'm not criticising for the sake of it, but the reality is when regular season starts, it won't be as easy to glide around and do this. And all of these reads here are open. And a similar thing here. Excellent play, showing off his talent. A phenomenal throw on the run. I just think, for me, it's first down, you take this read. Because the receiver actually on this play was out of bounds anyway, so it wasn't a touchdown. So it's a clear example of what I'm speaking about. He's showing terrific talent, doing more than he needs to. doesn't make it more efficient than just taking the read that's there. And then his final play of the preseason, I think, hilariously sums it all up with this prototypical rushing touchdown. You saw that he escaped to the left. He can go here. This opportunity is open. I'm willing to be proven wrong. I think he's very unique, but I never really want to see this movement sort of gliding back towards the danger. I think when the defenses are on it, that's a sack. The pockets will just not be this clean. So what does this preseason performance mean for Caleb Williams and the Bears? Does it change anything? Does it change my thoughts on him as a prospect? Not really. I still think it'll just be a case of he needs the right coaching like every quarterback prospect does. I found certain elements of his pocket movement concerning that they haven't already been ironed out in the lead up to these preseason games. But then those couple of moments where he was able to hang in the pocket and display his willingness to win within the structure, I think you can work with that if you're the coaching staff, and you can gradually develop him more and more towards a Mahomes way of doing it, where you only really pull out the special throws, the unorthodox moments when it's actually necessary. Okay, so moving on to Jayden Daniels. This breakdown isn't going to be as long because I honestly don't think there's too much to gather from his performance unless you didn't watch him coming out of college. He actually starts off by missing this check down against the Jets. Jayden Daniels was my QB2 coming out of the draft, but one of the things that slightly bothered me was I don't think he's a particularly loose, fluid thrower to where if there's a bit of pressure, he's going to be able to make off-platform throws, introduce different arm angles. I don't think that's who he is. But then on his second throw, he displays his downfield accuracy with this deep ball. I think this shows his courage to take the opportunities which you need to be able to do. It obviously displays his accuracy, but I also think he displayed an element of pocket awareness on this play because this rusher was on his heels and Daniels efficiently shuffled up and made the throw before he could be affected. There was then a screen and a light showing of his athleticism. You'll probably see a lot of this in his rookie season. And that was it against the Jets. That was the one drive he played. He got a bit more action versus the Dolphins. Starts off with a screen. And then you had this collection of throws to the sideline. And he was looking pretty sharp, pretty accurate, which I was expecting. One thing that came up in college is that he does throw a lot to the sideline and not so much down the middle. So I thought, although I personally didn't buy into that as a criticism, it's interesting that they've stuck with what he's familiar with, at least in preseason, getting him into the rhythm. Not too much criticism on this play, it just looked like a broken play all round. Another display of his athleticism and then a screen before his only throw over the middle, which was a bit off, but it looks very much like a rhythm throw. And as I've alluded to previously, these guys are still getting used to throwing to new receivers, and it could just be a case of getting on the same page as opposed to an inaccuracy. And then he finishes up with another throw to the sideline and a good job not forcing anything on this play as nothing comes open, and so he dumps it off. So as I say, I didn't really see anything unexpected from Jayden Daniels. I thought it was interesting that they had him throwing to the sideline a lot. It was also all one read. They weren't asking him to do too much processing at this point in time. He was really just playing point guard. Let's move on to Drake Maye, a pretty polarizing prospect coming out. He's clearly very talented and has a lot of highlight plays. However, my personal opinion is that this ideology that's come around with quarterback prospects about taking upside and developing them, it's been created by prospects like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, who coming out of college had a play style that wasn't particularly orthodox and needed a bit of time to adjust to the NFL, but then they were able to go through reads. Josh Allen struggled a touch with accuracy, and still does by the way to some extent, but neither of those guys by any means were Drake Maye coming out of college. I think his processing's pretty appalling. I think his pocket movement is as bad as I've ever seen it. He makes some excellent throws because he's very talented and he works out how to do it with pure talent as opposed to mechanics. However, he has some terrible misses and he has frequent misses. We know how difficult it is to play the quarterback position, so it just confuses me a touch that this guy who shows no real ability to play the position, we just assume that he's going to be able to change that. So I'm just putting out there where I stand on Drake Maye so that we can go into the preseason performance with a more positive conversation about if he's making some progress and if he's performing at a good level in comparison to what I thought of him coming out of college. So he starts off with a screen, and then this wasn't a terrible throw, although the placement could certainly be improved. This next one doesn't even look like it was a screen, but the protection was so bad that he's forced to check it down pretty automatically. He takes off on this play, and I think he's fair to do so. Nothing comes open. I thought this play was really impressive, looking off the defense and then throwing a strike down the middle, and then on a broken play shows off his improvisational skills. Unfortunately though, on this play, receiver does an incredible job adjusting to the ball, but for a simple throw, this is way off. This one wasn't complete, but I thought he threw a pretty nice deep ball. I like his patience here, gets to his check down because nothing comes open, and then this was a pretty good throw. This isn't exactly the best showing of the Patriots offense, but I think Drake Maye is doing a good job so far. Now there's a screen and a pretty easy rushing touchdown. This was the first of 3 fumbled snaps I saw in the preseason for Drake Maye, although it did seem like a bit more of an issue with the centre as opposed to Drake Maye. I didn't enjoy the hesitance to throw this ball. This is very much open. But then I got to give it to him. This is where I think people got so excited with the upside of Drake Maye. This is an aggressive decision that I like, and the throw is pretty good. It's a tough throw, and he puts it in a position where the receiver can at least make a play on the ball. He does seem to be getting a little bit jumpy though in this portion of the game. These are not wide open windows, but they are definitely windows of opportunity that he was taking earlier in the game. And the jumpiness in the pocket isn't helping because his feet aren't set and ready to make the throw as he sees it. This one I thought he could have given his receiver a bit more of an opportunity to go up and get the ball. I appreciate that this isn't a particularly well set up play, but I would definitely like the pocket movement to be a bit more smooth and a bit less frantic. But then I didn't hate this final snap against the Eagles. He takes the sack, but I would much rather him do this. He's looking to hang in the pocket and take an opportunity downfield. It's not there, he doesn't force it. This is on the coordinator to make sure that there's either an opportunity downfield that's going to be open, or he's protected well enough to then adjust when it's not open. Week 3 started strong against the Commanders as there was a fumbled snap literally before Drake Maye's had an opportunity to drop back, but then he makes a nice one read throw to the sideline. This is a very similar play, and I just don't understand the hesitancy to throw this ball. It's almost as though he's looking for the opportunity to run so that he doesn't have to throw, and I don't think that's a good habit to be getting into. If you're Drake Maye or you're the coaches trying to help Drake Maye, the starting point needs to be a willingness and a confidence to throw the ball, because that's how he's going to find his rhythm. However, it's good to see that he's still getting these little confidence boosters. This is a pocket movement issue. I think this is the read he's going for, which isn't open anyway, but you see the way he just sways into the pressure. That makes the throw far more difficult than it needs to be. If he had just held his position in the pocket, he could have set his feet and had space to throw the ball. I'm being a bit nitpicky now, but I'm only doing it because I know that this is important. I don't love the swaying to the left. The space is always here. This is always where you have your leverage. And he would have had more space to make this throw if he remained central. And I wish the receiver didn't have to turn around to make this catch. I think you can see that he's overthinking things now. This is open, and when he does try to drop it off here, you can see how hesitant he is to make the throw, and his feet are jumping all over the place as well. This is much more like it. He recognises that although this window is open, there is a defender lurking, and so he quite rightly recognises that the ball needs to be thrown with zip. We then had a screen, pretty solid off-platform throw. I think this is probably just a chemistry thing with his receiver, but you see how the throw is made more difficult because he's drifted towards the pressure again. And then this throw is just not good. There's not too much more to add other than, I promise you, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, these examples of project quarterbacks who developed over time, they were never missing throws like this. This one was a bit more understandable, but I would definitely like to see him make this throw. A bit of hesitation causes him to throw this behind his receiver. Nothing to add on this play. This deep ball, not that it's an easy throw, but for a guy who's supposed to have such high upside, for me, a guy with super high upside would be someone who's making a lot of these throws. The talent to get the ball there isn't enough for me to say upside. This check down was slightly behind the back, but not the end of the world. There was a positive and a negative on this play. It's an excellent throw, but you see how it's made more difficult as he shuffles towards the pressure. This is a wide open pocket and a wide open receiver, but I think it shows when things are a bit less hazy and he has the chance to throw with a bit more confidence, he looks a lot better. This was a completion, but the throw was high. I thought this was a classic example of where it's very difficult to analyse the quarterback position or most positions without all 22. I think this play was quite big on social media. Rolling to his left, makes a downfield throw for a touchdown. It was all pretty highlighty. But in reality, what's wrong with this read here? The deep ball only came available because this DB completely screwed things up. Or maybe it's someone around him who wasn't where they're supposed to be. When it comes to regular season, this is very much the opportunity. I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but clearly he's making things very difficult here, drifting towards the pressure. And then a pretty bizarre decision to try and force this one in. And then a pretty anticlimactic finish as he makes this short throw. So overall thoughts on that performance, I think it could have been worse. I think they made things pretty difficult for him. I think the game plan was to stretch the field and use Drake Maye's ability to throw downfield, give him some confidence, but that's made very difficult when you can't protect very well and they don't want to give too much away, and so plays aren't set up in the best way. There were definitely some flashes of good stuff like we saw in college, but I still just cannot get my head around this being the number 3 pick. If this was Joe Milton and you took him in the 5th, brilliant. A really talented guy with a ton to work on. And we're going to get to Joe Milton, who they also drafted. For me, it just looks like a mess. Everything looks frantic. Everything looks like he's trying to overcome deficiencies with pure talent. And the reality is, if you were to put him in now, he's going to really struggle because the team isn't good enough, but that wasn't the plan anyway. Even if you're developing him over the next 2 years and somehow the Patriots build a team like the Bengals did, drafting Joe Burrow, drafting Jamar Chase and building from there, it happened very, very quickly. I still think it's going to look like this because Drake Maye isn't the polished Kirk Cousins, Mac Jones type of quarterback where they can take advantage of a really good team. So I just don't see it, but we'll see where we're at mid-season. We'll see if Drake Maye has come in for whatever reason. I'll remain open-minded and see where it goes. So some things to keep an eye on in summary from this video. The first sort of 6 weeks are going to be very telling with Caleb Williams because my assumption is that we'll very quickly see a switch in mentality on what you can do and what you can't do. But if we're getting to week 6 and we're still seeing him ignore reads that he shouldn't be ignoring, taking unnecessary sacks because of poor pocket movement, then I will start to have some genuine concerns about Caleb Williams. Something to take away with Jayden Daniels, I would make it more of a joint thing with Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator. For anyone who isn't aware, he's just come in this season and he has his own history about collegey air raid offenses that don't translate to the NFL. And the preseason offense was one read sideline throws. Am I taking this as this is what he will do in the regular season? No, he's probably just trying to not share what he's going to do in the regular season at this point in time. I thought Jayden Daniels was a good enough processor coming out of college, but I also wasn't blown away by his processing. I don't think he had a ton on his plate in college in terms of processing. So can Daniels and Kingsbury get together to create a complex enough offense to where you can be effective and use the combination of athleticism and ability to throw on time and accurately that Jayden Daniels has? And my takeaway with Drake Maye would be, I hope he doesn't play this year. I don't think he's ready and I don't think the team's ready. So first of all, can we see a guy like Javon Baker, who I was a huge fan of coming out of the draft? They also drafted before him Jalen Polk, who I wasn't such a big fan of. They've got a young guy in Demario Douglas coming through as well. Can we see some of these weapons coming through? And then in the offseason, can we see them really improve on the offensive line so that Drake Maye is coming back maybe next year, maybe the season after that, give him 2 years. But when we do see Drake Maye taking legitimate NFL snaps, whenever that may be, my thing to look out for with him would be, can he tighten up his motion a little bit and can he improve that pocket movement? Because I think those are the two things that are making it all look a bit messy. And yes, I have issues with his processing and his accuracy, but the only way you can really improve on those things is if you can find rhythm, and you can't find rhythm with the way he's frantically jumping around the pocket. So that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Keep an eye out for the next 2 parts of this series. If you did enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. It would be greatly appreciated, and I will see you next time.